So, hi, Andy.
Hello.
Um, Hello. I was just saying that I've known you for quite a long time, and I've seen your career go from stand-up comedy through. I think the first time we worked together was on Holby City,
Yeah.
and then going up through, and you've had a fairly prolific career since then, and I see you as a modern Renaissance woman, to be honest.
Oh,
I
okay.
looked up. I just did a very quick search on you online before, and it says Andi Osho is a successful actress, writer, and comedian. I thought
Uh-huh.
was quite interesting. Successful. How do you respond to that, Andy? Being a successful actress, writer, and comedian. How does that
All
make you
right.
feel?
Oh, so thanks, Mum. Um, how does it make me feel? I mean, that's where my mind goes is like that's the exterior experience that people will have looking at me, I guess. And I'm not going to refute it or agree with it, but I know the sort of struggles and the journey that you have to go on to get to a place where people would even perceive you in that way. But successful is such a funny term, isn't it? Because it's so objective. It's like, when I just changing career, when I decided to become an actor at 29, I could consider that a success because I was on a path that wasn't feeding me. So even making a choice to change and just to pivot because that's what I wanted felt
So
like a success.
when you did that pivot, because I have a lot of respect for you, and I think you're a very hard worker and you're a very
Bless you.
generous person along the way, and very talented as well. But the other elements are equally as important. So when you decided you wanted to become an actor, can you talk us through because, so I'm going to caveat a bit more as well. I've worked with you before when you've decided to make some big changes that could have been
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
financially detrimental to you, and
Mm.
career-wise were big risks. But you made those decisions with integrity, and you did it. So when you decided to become an actor, can you talk around that a little bit?
Yeah, so basically, I worked in TV post production. I had a good job. I was sort of on a decent path with it, and it was stable. I was employed. I wasn't freelance, but then I became a freelancer in that world, and I was working adjacent to actors. So normally in post production, you don't really have anything to do with the talent, as it were. And so in on this particular project, the actors were very close by. They were touching distance. You could smell the grease paint. And so I don't know. I don't think it was just being in proximity to them. I think that ignited or reignited something that was already laying dormant in me that I finally made room for. And
So how did you make it that room? How did you make that room within yourself?
well, I'd like to say that there was a plan, but it really was an incremental thing of moving towards the thing that I wanted. So, I started chatting with the actors, like, how do you even become an actor? Because I really was completely naive about it. I didn't know about drama school. I mean, I kind of did because I had some friends go to drama school when I'd finished my A levels, but I didn't realize that was back then, that was the route in that everyone talked about. And so they told me a little bit about that. And they were I remember one actress being quite sort of like guarded about it, as though almost like she regarded it as a bit of a closed shop. But anyways, so that was where I started. I started going to this part-time drama school and started doing workshops and on that journey, I think that's probably where we met a bit later on down the line. But I always considered the sort of educational aspect of it, like training was required at some point, whether you do it all in a 3 year chunk at the beginning or you consider everything you do as an apprenticeship, which is what I told myself. I said, look, I'm not going to go to drama school, but I have to train. I have to consider everything
Yeah.
I'm doing to be this apprenticeship.
That was at Barking and Dagenham College or something. What was that?
So
That seems
yeah,
to.
that's where I did A levels, and I it was almost like when I chose my A level. So I did theatre, film, and television. So I obviously had some pull towards the arts and towards yeah. But when it came to that point of making a decision, so I had many peers who went off to like Central and they did various, went to various drama schools. It did not occur to me that that was something that I could do. You know how people tell themselves a story about who they are, and they diminish themselves with it. Well, that's what I did. I didn't realize, obviously. So instead, I went to a place called Ravensbourne, where you
Ravensbourne,
specialize
yeah.
in, yeah, in making TV programs. So I learned how to, operate cameras, sound desks, all that sort of thing. But whenever anyone needed like a TV presenter or an actor, I'm like, I'll do it. Not even still joining the dots that might suggest perhaps, this is not
Yeah.
necessarily the best environment for me.
So how did you get from Ravensbourne to doing live at the Apollo and never mind the Buzzcocks? How did
Well,
that
all right.
happen?
The abridged version of that is that I left Ravensbourne. I went to work in TV post production and broadcast technology. I did that for 10 years. I decided it wasn't for me. I pivoted, started my sort of apprenticeship in acting. Things got very quiet after about 4 or 5 years. So I started out the gate pretty good. I got my EastEnders and Doctors and stuff like that, a bit like the odd episode here and there. And then things got really quiet, and I was like, I need stage time. I need to, because I was starting to get stage fright, and it was really disruptive. Like I was sort of shaking and stuff, like just doing a play reading and things like that. So I was like,
So
what can
sorry,
I
so you were getting stage fright because you weren't doing anything. So
exactly?
when you
Yeah,
did do it, so it was the gap in between doing a job and doing another job
yeah.
made you think too much and see it as a career and am I going to do well and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, I guess probably because it was so quiet in my mind, I probably had raised the stakes when an opportunity did come along, even if it was something small. I've got a specific example in mind of thinking. I did a play reading at the Royal Court, and there are a few people off the TV who are involved in this thing, and I was just like, oh my God, that's so and so, blah, blah. And I was tripping up over my words. Like, I mean, yeah, it was not a good look, and I felt crappy about it afterwards,
But
And
it
so
didn't
that's when
finish you though. It didn't finish you.
no, no, no. But so that's that. What it did is galvanize me to realize I have to make a decision about how to move forward so that this doesn't become disabling. And so that was basically what started me towards comedy, because I was like, you can choose your stage time, you can get as much as you want if you're good, and it's something that's in your control, that you don't have to wait for a casting director to give you permission. So that was what started me on my stand-up journey.
Wow. And obviously it was a hit because people wanted to employ you to do it, and then more people wanted to employ saw that, and then it got bigger and bigger. So what happened? So you got to the stand-up comedy, um, not a peak, but well known, established, choice of gigs possibly, locate, and all of that hustle. But then there was must have been another pivot to what in America they would call legit acting.
Hmm.
So what happened then? How come?
Um, the one word answer is depression.
Okay.
I got to basically, so around about 2012, I think I did my second live at the Apollo. But what was happening was I was starting to be offered things that I didn't realize just were not filling me up at all in the comedy space. There's a lot of panel shows, and oh, we're working on this format, various versions of Mock the Week, but it might be with film or with sport or with whatever. And I wasn't enjoying it at all. And I think what was starting to happen was there was a distance starting to open up between me and the persona that I was adopting on stage. And I think that was where the depression came from, was just being so there just being that gap, that chasm that was opening up between who I was as an artist and who I was having to put out into the world. I'm still
Wow.
making sense of this, so this is where my head's at with it today. And so it got to the point where I was just like, this is untenable. I realize now in hindsight, I was exhausted as well. I was sort of maybe adrenal burnout or something like that. And so I said to myself, right, I was like in the midst of this depression. And also around that time, I'd been bereaved as well. A friend had died. And so there was a lot of emotions going on. And I said to myself, I was Googling one night, working in America. So I was like, and so long story short, I ended up going to America, not with anything specific in mind, but really wanting to just wipe the slate clean, really. I think that was what my underlying unconscious intention was to wipe the slate clean, give myself permission to just create something anew, create myself as a creative anew. So that's kind of, I can't remember what your question was, but
No, but it's
that's
okay
what.
because so. But what I get from
Oh, for
that,
legit
and from
acting, yeah.
yeah, but what I get from that and from other stuff is that you recognize it's a time to do something and you do something about it rather
Yeah.
than let it go too far when you can't, into when it doesn't overtake you. It might become slightly overwhelming, but really because there's a word that when I think of you, I the word integrity always comes up for me because
Yeah.
I think that you have some great sides to you. You're really lovely, but you're also very assertive as well. I think not aggressive, but definitely assertive in the way that if you see that you want to do something, you kind of go forward and do it. And if somebody's treating you well, you recognize that. And if somebody's treating you poorly, you don't let them treat you poorly. So when you went to change the various stages so far that we've talked about your career, it seems that you do it assertively and with integrity. So, so there's a question coming. Um, so when you were in the States, I remember we talked when you were in the States quite a bit. So when you were in the States, you had already achieved some success in terms of TV and film. That's right?
Yeah, I mean, the industry there is very different to ours. So, and my relationship with it was different, and it was harder to get traction. I think that was the headline for me, was that, like, where in the UK you could build on, oh, you've done Doctors, oh, you've done EastEnders, oh, you've done The Bill. I didn't do The Bill, but like, it would build and build, and eventually you might get, a few scenes in something rather than just a few lines. There it was not like, for me anyways, it wasn't like that at all. It was a real, like, it was real piecemeal stuff. And so yeah, that proved to be a challenge. However, I was really interested in other things, so, and I liked trying other things. So I started blogging and started exploring filmmaking and stuff like that. So there was some success, but I wouldn't call it, I wasn't recreating what I had in the UK. And actually, what was quite challenging to the ego was that, I've done Live at the Apollo twice, I've done loads of Mock the Weeks and all the rest of it. And have this, the bounty of clips that I would try and take to bookers. And they're like, yeah, nah. Like, American bookers just didn't really care. They didn't know these shows. And
Yeah,
actually, Live at the Apollo in the US was a talent search show. It wasn't, that happened to have the same name, but or Showtime at the Apollo or whatever it's called.
yeah.
So yeah, it was really hard to get to have a parallel between, or have them see a parallel between what I'd already done in the UK and try have that translate to the US.
So what you did then was you decided that this isn't right, this isn't working for me. So you decided to come back to the UK rather than overstay your welcome and just let it drag out and whatever. So you came back here and you had the same agent, didn't you? When you that you've had the same agent all the way through.
No, I
That's right.
haven't. I changed agency because of various reasons, but I ended up going back. She started her own agency and I ended up going back to her. So,
Right,
yeah.
right. So when you came back, what was that like? When you sort of come back here and you've been away for a while. Were there offers at the door, or did you have to start again?
No, it was, I mean, thankfully I was building on something. And, for me, the pivot, when you talk about sort of legit acting, I guess, the stuff I've done in the States was helpful. But actually, before I came back, I think it was like 2017, I did a show called Carrie on Channel 4, which was a very sort of gritty, hard
Yeah,
hitting Sarah Lancashire led drama. I was
yeah.
cast for some reason as a step grandmother, and
You were the
look at
sister,
this
weren't you?
kid. How's that possible? But yeah, so and that I mean, I remember doing the self tape for it, and a friend came over. And I was just like, oh, there's no point in doing this. I'm never going to get this job. But blah blah blah. Let's just do it anyway. And I was sort of grumpy through the whole tape. And they offered me the job. And when the offer came through, I was like, that doesn't even make any sense. But I'm so 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 grateful. Um,
Yeah,
and so I think that started laying the foundation. Then I did a play, which you came, The Misers, which you came to
yeah,
see. Then I did a show called Curfew for Sky. So that there was already, and I was technically still living in the States at that time. So I was starting to build those credits of like legit acting and on top of the stuff that I'd done in the States. So that by the time I came back, there was a bit of momentum behind me so that, when I got cast in other things, I wasn't starting from scratch. And also I had like, my previous career and my stand up and all the rest of it. So there was I think, enough there for casting directors to trust me
yeah.
as a possibility.
Yeah, and at the time, I think because of that link, I guess you got a presenting job for Channel 5, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was the stand up that made that happen. It was on Channel 4, but it was that was a really interesting job because like first of all it came in a really weird way because the producer reached out on Instagram for what turned out to be quite a lucrative presenting contract. And so when this thing came through on Instagram, I was like, this is obviously a scam. Like, you get these things from time to time. Oh, we really like, and then fill in the sort of generic title that they've scraped from your website or whatever. Um, but she was legit, and I ended up doing this thing, and it was an itch to scratch, and I enjoyed it to begin with, and then it didn't take long before I really did not enjoy it. I realized like I am not meant to be a TV presenter. And on top of that, there are people who are so good at this as a skill, and it's almost not wrong, but it just makes more sense for those folks to have this opportunity than for me. And what I really love about that, just in terms of a circle of life, serendipity type of thing, is that I ended up quitting Super Shoppers, as you know, and we talked about it. But the person that ended up taking over from me, she actually really loves being a TV presenter, and it was a really brilliant break for her. And we've sort of
Right.
chatted a few times since then. And I think that's absolutely right. I stepped out of the way so that the person who was really meant to have that job and flourish from that point, was able to step into that space. I was like
Yeah.
in the way almost.
Yeah, it's interesting because that it was a risk in a way. It could have been perceived as a risk that you were going to step away from this, well-paid job, and they were offering you the next season as well. The money it was good enough, but to sort of say, I am going to say no to that money, say no to that regular on TV spot with good exposure. And there's lots of reasons. There was a if we put the line down the middle, there's lots of reasons to do that job, but
Yeah.
the reasons to not do the job were less reasons, but stronger. And because you had the integrity again and the strength of personality, I remember very clearly when we were sitting in Pizza Express, sorry.
In
There was
Walthamstow,
a
yeah.
in Walthamstow, Pizza Express, which is now Five Guys.
Yeah.
There are other hamburger firms also, but I remember it was a strong decision that you made that this is not what I want to do in life. What I want to do is this, and I'm
Mm,
going to say no to that, and I'm going to say yes to this, which is less formed but more potential,
hmm.
or more potential to be fulfilled. So
Fulfilled.
what happened? What happened after that to get you to fast forward a bit towards being incredible in Blue Lights, being so. One of my other clients said to me that he saw you in Blue Lights and he thought you were amazing because you were so nuanced, and that there
Oh,
was. But you're incredibly comfortable, and playing the police sergeant with such you seem so relaxed in it, and but it's such an important role and such a powerful woman in it. So how did you get from being doing Super Shopper to being that woman?
Yeah. So I think I just want to say, like, you could, when you were talking about that Super Shopper's decision, what was underpinning it was really orientating myself towards focusing on what really brings me joy and fulfillment, rather than trying all these other random things. Because you remember, I had, I don't know if you remember it as clearly, but for me it was such a pivotal moment when we came out of the miser and we were heading down the escalator on the tube, and I was saying, oh, I'm doing all these things and nothing's really catching, nothing's really working out. And you basically, I think you gave me like a free coaching session or something, and you were like, you're just spread too thin. Basically, you're just doing all these, what is it that you actually want? And I think that conversation just precipitated so many other thoughts for me, of just like how important it is to just know what you really want and to focus on that. And sometimes, yes, you may have to do other survival jobs and things like that, just for money and for other reasons, but just to be conscious of those things. And so what I really took from our conversation was, oh, I'm an actor and I'm a writer. All that other stuff isn't bringing me anything, maybe financially, but it isn't bringing me the joy and the fulfillment that I really want to make my kind of North Star. And
Right,
so, and yeah, so that was a really, really, and like I reference it all the time when I talk about career changes and career choices, because otherwise I just would have been scattered everywhere, like in all directions. But that really sort of focused me. And that's why the Super Shoppers decision was so relatively easy, because it's like, it's not fulfilling me, it's not bringing me joy, and it is taking energy from the things that I really feel passionately about. And it helped me as a, I don't know if I actually have ADHD, but if there is any of that in there, like, it's very easy to get distracted and go, oh, shiny thing, let me go off and do that. And I used to be like that all the time. Whereas now, even though I have the impulse, I can stop myself and go, fulfillment, joy, acting, writing, focus. And then it stops
right,
me getting involved in things that aren't going to serve, aren't going to be in service of that.
right.
So then, to get from there, because now I'm focused, right? So now I can just think about acting. What One thing to just go back to America is, I had a really amazing acting coach called Howard Fine, who, I think, building on what we did when we worked on Holby, because you actually opened up a lot for me just in that process, because you were asking me so many questions about the character that I never normally thought about. I just sort of, like, I was a very learn your lines, stand in the right place type of actor, and in hindsight I can see now why I wasn't progressing in the way that I wanted to, because I just wasn't preparing the roles as deeply as I should have been. And so you started the process of me really getting under the skin of the character to be able to make them a real person on screen. And then Howard Fine, sort of, the work that I did in his studio just added on top of that. And I realized, oh, it's almost infinite. Like, I remember having this aha moment in his studio, thinking it's almost infinite the amount of work you can do. No wonder actors spend 2 or 3 years, like those Oscar winning actors spend 2 or 3 years preparing for a role, because you're getting that character so inside your skin that their impulses are second nature. So you don't have to act. That's what all that time is for, is to stop yourself acting rather than to act.
Yeah,
So that really changed how I approached roles. And yeah, you can develop some tools and some shorthand for it, especially for self tapes and things like that, but there isn't really any substitute for doing the work. And so your question about how I got to be Sandra in Blue Lights was just basically doing that in every role as much as I could,
yeah,
and not getting bored or tiring of it. And actually, if I'm getting bored, I realize maybe I'm just doing the wrong bit of prep. I'm sort of not prepping in the right way.
yeah,
So
yeah.
so I don't know if this is useful for the students to say a bit about what I do, like I have
Yeah,
done
go
with
for it.
Sandra.
Go for
Yeah.
it.
Um, so obviously the place that we started is we get the material. I weirdly, which is it's so unusual for me, I was just pretty much a straight offer, which is not the norm for me. And certainly at that time, this was like 20, I think 2023, something like that. Or yeah, anyways, I was straight off. So I had a chat with the director, and that was it. I was off, like off with my own devices. So the first place I started watching 24 Hours in Custody on Channel 4. There's Channel 4 sort of doc or whatever they call them, where they're basically observing this custody area in a police station, just to get a feel for who custody sergeants are. And I think a lot of people have this idea that they're quite sort of bullish and, you deserve what you get. And it's absolutely the opposite. They are there to be almost like the custodian of the detained person and look after them and make sure that their rights are observed, and, their food they get food, and that if they need a blanket and all of that stuff. So that really sort of already sort of dismantled a stereotype that I would have brought if I hadn't started doing my research.
Yeah.
Um, then I sort of reached out to friends, family, anyone know any police officers, anyone know any custody sergeants? And then, I started having conversations with police officers. And obviously, once you go down that road, it's such a fascinating world. There's so much that, in fact, I think one of the officers, he's retired, is joined this chat, but he helped me a lot with the research, and then he hooked me up with somebody who was actually a custody sergeant. So then I got to understand all of that. But now I've got the problem of I'm talking to British or English police officers. In Northern Ireland, it's a different story. So I get hooked up with a black Northern Irish police officer, or person of color. They weren't black, but they were a person of color who's currently in the Northern Ireland PSNI. So that adds another layer of like understanding of what this world is. Then I
Yeah.
start to sort of put my backstory together. How on earth did I? Because I'm not doing a Belfast accent in this. I'm a Londoner who's displaced, or moved to. So what's the backstory? How has this happened? What's my relationship to everybody? Like I say, it's infinite. So there's some pages in my book. I get a big like A3 notebook and just write and write and write. That's how I process stuff. Is I write stuff down. And so I'm like, what's my relationship to Helen? What do I think of the new recruits? And then look for clues in the script, because obviously if it's not in the script, you can make stuff up, but only if it's supported by the material, So then you start to look for all the clues in the material about who your character is. And I try and take the script as gospel unless it's an absolutely obvious mistake. Like if they've said one thing in one script and then something else that contradicts it in another, take it all as gospel. And therefore, all right, even if it clunks, you're like, the writer obviously meant it. So how can I make that make sense for my character? So yeah, so then there's a lot of that. And I actually go through every script and I think about, what do I want? What's in my way? What are the obstacles? What's the ideal outcome? Sometimes I'll do that so that you can play the surprise, or whatever the emotion is when you don't get what you want out of a scene, the disappointment, the frustration, the anger, or whatever. Because because there's such an important moment when you're watching when you're watching character on screen, where you see a transition as they realize they're going to get what they want, or they're not going to get what
Yeah.
they want, or it's
Yeah.
going to be harder than they thought, or whatever. So you don't want to
Yeah.
play the problem or play anticipating, knowing where this thing is going, where this
Yeah.
conversation is going. So yeah, so it's all of that really. I mean, I could go on and on, but like
But
that's
it's
basically,
been
yeah.
written in. Though, sorry, just on that note, the writer has written those moments in as well. So if you do ignore them, then you're not serving the piece, and the journey, the roller coaster ride of the scene, or the whole episode even, is not honoured. So the cart that's in the roller coaster wobbles and the people are, nobody enjoys watching that or being in it. So
It does, but I would say that actually some is written in, but some isn't. Like, say for example, there's a clip that the BBC put up recently of where myself and another officer, we notice. Well, he notices, the officer I'm with notices there's an old man who's got odd shoes on, but I don't see that. So we stop, we pull over. He starts talking to the guy, and he quickly realizes, Tommy realizes, oh, he's got dementia, and we radio in, and my character asks him, how did you know? And he says, and he points down to his shoes. He's got wearing one slipper and one sort of regular shoe. And so my character's like, blimey. Like, if I play, so if I played that like, oh, of course that's me anticipating the answer. Do you know what I mean? If I played it like, oh yes, I see that. Yes, he does have odd shoes. There's no surprise. There's no transition. There's no, oh, I did not expect that. You know what I mean? Like, so that wasn't necessarily written in like that, but that was like actor's choice to go. I didn't see that, and I'm actually really impressed that you did. You know,
Yeah.
like, so have that transition in there. So
So
yeah,
that's
there's
what they
all.
call strong choices, isn't it? I guess.
Yeah, I guess so. I think it's sort of like trying to remind yourself to truly live in the skin of that person, rather than, which is a mistake I think I made previously, of trying to think, what should this be? What have I seen previously, and how can I recreate that? No, no,
Yeah.
Sandra is alive and real, and she becomes
Yeah.
Sandra because I'm playing her, and I have to sort of think, all right, how would I be in that moment? Not how should
Yeah.
I be, how would I be?
Yeah.
Really, genuinely.
Yeah, and at the risk of sounding like James Lipton on the Actors Studio, like the Actors Studio, you did an amazing, incredible job with it. I mean, you
Oh, thank
really,
you.
really have got so many layers and levels. And when you say about the job of the custody sergeant and it's you really, the kind person who also doesn't take any crap from people.
Oh,
um
right, thank
or,
you.
so you really put yourself into that. I can see how that is, but then you filled it up with the script and with your homework and your research. So it was really, really good. So talking of writing, you're now a best-selling author. You've done how many novels? Four. You just finished your fourth, haven't you? It's
Just finished my third. So yeah, so it's
third.
out. It's out in March. So we're but available to pre-sale. I mean to pre-order. But like, yeah, I feel like for me, acting and writing, they go hand in hand. That's just for me. Um, Someone said that something that I really like, which is that when a writer writes, they're basically taking this entire world, especially with a screenplay, and they're condensing it, squeezing it down into this screenplay. And then an actor's job is to explode it back out again. And obviously it's going to come out in a different shape because they don't know necessarily all the intentions that the writer had. But I so I really like that. I enjoy both parts of those processes of squeezing everything down into the screenplay, but also exploding it all back out again.
Well, great. Um, I'm aware of time, and I don't want to keep you because I know you're a very busy young lady. I just wanted two things before I finish. One of them is the last book launch that I went to of yours. You also did it co with your mum. So just wanted to do a quick shout out to your mum. Who also wrote.
Yeah.
So what happened? You wrote a novel at the same time as she wrote one.
Well, we both started around the same time, but hers was more of a sort of a leisure project. So she didn't have the press of a contract sort of bearing down on her. But she wanted to write her life story. She'd been inspired by a couple of people she'd met who had done the same thing, and she's just like, you know what, I want to do that for my family. And so, yeah, she just set about sort of just trying to remember as much as she could about her life, put it all into a book. And then I offered to proofread it, and then I ended up getting involved in editing it. And then, when we finished, she hadn't really thought about what the next step with it was. So I was like, well, babe, we got self-publish. So we ended up going down that road. And one of the cover was was based on a painting that she'd done because that had become part of her life as well after retirement. And yeah, so we just had this lovely sort of little side hustle of like going out and selling our books together, and it's been a real
Yeah.
joy.
Yeah, lovely. So, okay, so I think Real Joy is a good place to bring it to a close, I guess, because it feels like if I was going to put a label on it, it feels if it's not fulfilling and joyful, don't do it. Do something else instead.
I think that that's good. That's really good. But sometimes the demands of life don't allow us to make that choice.
Yes.
So I say that with that caveat, but
Yeah.
for me, certainly that's been the North Star that I've been aiming for, and it makes life really rich. If you can afford yourself that, and it does involve making some brave choices and, cutting some stuff out that's not working, cutting some stuff out that wish would work. But it does, for me, it has been a much more satisfying way to navigate life.
Yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
lovely. Okay, well, Andy Osho, I
Daniel.
very much appreciate your time and lovely talking to you. We could keep going for hours, but I'm
I
sure
know.
I don't have enough capacity on my phone either, so that's something else.
What is it saving?
Um,
Oh, right. Okay. Yes, you can
yeah,
share it, can't you? Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I'd like to also say that I went for the whole time without any dad jokes, so I'm maturing and growing as well.
Wow, look at you. Look at you.
All right. Thank you everyone for watching now, and thank you for all of you who watch it on catch up. Very inspirational lady, the lovely Andi Osho. Everyone, bye
Thanks,
bye,
guys. See
bye,
ya.
bye, bye, all.